The story of Ibrahim Traoré, the young revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, has captured the imagination of millions across Africa and beyond. Ever since his sudden rise to power, Traoré has been at the center of countless claims, rumors, and reports about bold initiatives said to be reshaping his nation. Among these, perhaps, none has been as widely circulated, debated, and mythologized as the story that Burkina Faso, under Traoré's leadership, has built 10,000 3D-printed social houses in record time. The claim has been amplified on social media platforms, cited by blogs and commentators, and celebrated in communities that view Traoré as a symbol of African self-reliance. Yet, the question remains: how much of this story is grounded in fact, and how much of it is wrapped in exaggeration, political narrative, or outright fiction? To truly assess this claim, one must start by looking at the context in which it emerged. Burkina Faso is a landlocked West African nation long plagued by poverty, food insecurity, and political instability. For decades, infrastructure development lagged behind population growth. Millions of Burkinabés have struggled with inadequate housing, living in overcrowded compounds, informal settlements, or rural areas where traditional mud brick homes crumble under harsh seasonal rains. Against this backdrop, the idea of a government-led housing revolution powered by futuristic 3D printing technology sounds both audacious and inspiring. It speaks to the desperate need for solutions and the hunger for leaders who dare to attempt the impossible, but inspiration alone cannot substitute for facts. The origins of the 10,000 home story appear to trace back to a mix of official statements, media misinterpretations, and social media enthusiasm. Reports emerged suggesting that Burkina Faso was exploring partnerships with innovative construction firms from Africa, the Middle East, and even China. Some of these companies have developed the capacity to 3D print entire houses in a matter of days using special cement mixtures and advanced robotics. In theory, this technology can slash construction costs, reduce reliance on imported materials, and provide durable, eco-friendly housing at scale. In practice, however, most countries experimenting with 3D printed homes are still in the pilot stage, building dozens or at most a few hundred units. So how plausible is it that Burkina Faso, a country facing both economic challenges and ongoing security concerns, could leapfrog global leaders in this sector and build 10,000 homes in one initiative? On a purely technical level, the feat would require massive investment in specialized printers, training programs for local workers, steady supply chains for construction materials, and extensive logistical planning. It would also require political stability, protection of construction sites, and sufficient electricity and water infrastructure to sustain the printing process. Each of these hurdles is significant in itself. When considered together, they suggest that if the claim were entirely factual, it would represent one of the most extraordinary infrastructure undertakings, not just in Africa, but worldwide. That is why many analysts remain skeptical. Instead, a more likely scenario is that Burkina Faso, under Traoré, may indeed have launched a pilot program for 3D printed social housing, potentially in partnership with foreign firms or African innovators. Such a program might involve hundreds of homes, perhaps even a few thousand over several years. Yet, social media amplification turned an ambitious pilot into a headline-grabbing legend of 10,000 houses. In the digital era, narratives often take on a life of their own, especially when they fit into broader themes of resistance, independence, and innovation. And that broader narrative is important. Whether or not the precise number of 10,000 homes is accurate, the story captures something very real about Ibrahim Traoré's leadership style. He has positioned himself as a disruptor, willing to experiment with unconventional solutions and eager to challenge the dominance of Western aid models. In this light, promoting or allowing the circulation of a bold claim about futuristic housing projects aligns with his political strategy. It presents him not merely as a president managing day-to-day crises, but as a visionary reimagining the very possibilities of African development. Moreover, the 3D-printed home story cannot be separated from Burkina Faso's broader housing crisis. Independent assessments estimate that the country faces a deficit of hundreds of thousands of affordable units. Urbanization is accelerating, with families flocking to Ouagadougou and Bobo-Dioulasso in search of work, while rural housing remains vulnerable to climate change. Against this demand, even a smaller project of several thousand homes could make a real difference, offering shelter, stability, and dignity to many. In this sense, the difference between 2,000 and 10,000 homes, while dramatic on paper, may not be the most important point. The significance lies in the direction of policy. A government willing to prioritize housing for the poor and to test cutting-edge technology as part of its solution. Still, separating fact from fiction matters. For supporters of Traore, inflated claims can create unrealistic expectations and invite disappointment if targets are not met. For critics, exaggerated reports become easy ammunition, feeding narratives that portray his government as reliant on propaganda rather than substance. In geopolitics, perception is as important as reality, but credibility remains a precious asset. If Burkina Faso is truly committed to large-scale 3D printing, it will need transparency, clear timelines, and demonstrable results. Looking beyond Burkina Faso, the story also raises larger questions about Africa's role in technological adoption. Why shouldn't African nations be at the forefront of using robotics, 3D printing, and renewable energy to solve local challenges? For too long, innovation has been treated as the domain of wealthy nations, while developing countries were expected to receive outdated or discarded solutions. By even experimenting with 3D printed housing, Burkina Faso signals a refusal to accept this hierarchy. It asserts that African problems demand African-led innovation, even if supported by international expertise. One must also consider the symbolic power of housing itself. For ordinary Burkinabe, a home is not just shelter, it is security, heritage, and pride. Colonial legacies, economic inequality, and forced displacements have long denied Africans the stability of permanent, dignified housing. To claim that 10,000 modern homes have been built is to declare a kind of liberation, a reversal of centuries of deprivation. Even if the claim is overstated, the emotional resonance is undeniable. From a historical perspective, Ibrahim Traoré is often compared to Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader of the 1980s who sought to transform Burkina Faso through radical self-reliance. Sankara launched massive reforestation campaigns, built infrastructure with local labor, and promoted homegrown development models. Traoré, whether consciously or not, appears to draw upon this legacy. By associating himself with futuristic projects like 3D-printed homes, he signals continuity with Sankara's ethos of daring to imagine a new Burkina Faso, free from dependency. Yet one must ask, does exaggerating achievements harm that legacy? Or does it, paradoxically, serve it by mobilizing popular imagination? After all, revolutions often depend on dreams that outpace immediate reality. The idea of 10,000 homes may not reflect precise construction statistics, but it reflects an aspiration, one that inspires citizens to believe that radical change is possible, and that Africa need not always be on the receiving end of history. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Evidence suggests that Burkina Faso has indeed embraced experimental construction methods, including elements of 3D printing, with the goal of scaling up social housing. The figure of 10,000 homes, however, is likely inflated or symbolic, more a rallying cry than a completed fact. As time passes, the government will be judged not on social media narratives, but on the concrete results visible in towns and villages. If thousands of families move into durable, affordable houses built faster and cheaper than ever before, then even if the numbers were initially exaggerated, the legacy will stand. What is beyond doubt is the effect of the story itself. Whether fact or fiction, the narrative of 10,000 3D-printed homes has added to the aura surrounding Ibrahim Traoré. It has fueled his image as a leader, unafraid of innovation, willing to defy the odds, and determined to write a new chapter for Burkina Faso. It has sparked debates about technology, development, and sovereignty in Africa. And it has reminded the world that, in an age of doubt, people still crave leaders who dare to dream boldly. In the end, separating fact from fiction may matter less than understanding why such stories resonate so deeply. They resonate because they speak to unmet needs, collective hopes, and the yearning for dignity. For the people of Burkina Faso, whether Traore has built 10,000 houses, or only a fraction of that number, the deeper truth is that he has reignited belief in possibility. And belief, history shows, is often the first step toward reality.